Hello, my name is Angela Wall. I am the Executive Director of Chamber Music Houston, and again with me, thank goodness, again is Dr. Matt Lammers, one of the co-directors and co-founders of the Opus One Chamber Music School. I think I got it right that time.
Nailed it.
And we're going to be talking today about Modigliani Quartet. They're going to be coming November 18th. So let's go ahead and find out what they're doing.
Yeah. It's a really cool program. It's super relevant to the kind of conversations that we've had already. We've talked a lot about Beethoven. We've talked about Haydn and Mozart and the classical period as like a very transitional time.
Right.
And now Modigliani are coming in and they're playing Haydn and Beethoven and then Brahms, which we haven't really gotten to
No,
yet.
we never talked about him.
The connection between Beethoven and Brahms is particularly strong and interesting and obvious.
So it starts with Haydn.
Yeah, we start with Haydn.
We start with Haydn.
Yeah.
Okay.
And perhaps ironically, we're starting with Haydn as Haydn is finishing with Haydn. This is his last string quartet.
Okay.
Yeah. So he at the end of his life, he really escalates. He accelerates. He writes a whole bunch of string quartets. There's the Opus 76s, which are a set of 6, extremely inventive, really cool, super standard repertoire. And then straight after that, he publishes the Opus 77s. We're used to seeing composers in batches of 6 at that point, but Haydn stops at 2. He writes 77-1, 77-2, and then kind of leaves it there.
Was that because of a health reason, or he was just done, or?
There's a lot of speculation. My opinion, which is really only an opinion, is that he was just sort of ready to be done. And this is about the same time he wrote the Creation Oratorio, which we know was like a hugely, massively, widely popular piece, extremely inventive. He's like literally pulling in instruments that had only recently been invented, like never used in an orchestra before, with a choir, so like he's done this huge magnum opus, life-defining thing. It's literally the creation of the world. And I feel like going back to string quartets at that point, you're kind of like,
Yeah, I get it. Kind of pales.
Maybe that's an exclamation point. That's my speculation.
Kind of makes sense to me. When I was saying, was he just done? Was just an instinct? Yeah, because he's probably like, yeah, okay. And you're right. It's like, yeah.
And he didn't like die immediately afterwards, but it smells like retirement a little bit.
This is like the end.
Yeah, this is not in the sort of Beethovenian morbid sense, but this is his retirement celebration a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
Or one of a few of them. Yeah.
So I see here you have the third movement. I see.
Yeah.
The Andante?
Yeah, and every movement of this quartet is interesting in its own way. But what I'd love to do to kind of put a thread through the entire program here and do some apples to apples comparing of the 3 composers is focus on the slow movements of each of the quartets.
And those are always my favorites, actually.
They're lovely, right? I mean, they get so overlooked.
I mean, it's really crazy to me that most people aren't interested in those slow movements because I'm always living for those because that's where, not that the others aren't great and interesting and invented or whatever, but I can always breathe when I'm listening to the slow movements. I can always just sort of relax. I don't have to wait for, like, when we did that dig.
Yeah, right.
I don't have to worry about what's coming down the pipe.
And they bake plenty of surprises into these things. But what's kind of cool about it is that the structure of these traditional slow movements in the classical period is it's a little bit less rigid. Like first movements in particular, this is sonata form, and deviations from that tend to be a pretty big deal. Like our expectations of what key we're going to use, and that another theme that sounds sort of like this comes next.
Okay.
Like it's really quite structured. And then the slow movement, there are quite a few options for the way to structure it. People have lower expectations of how exactly it's going to work. So it's sort of a fun little exploratory movement. And you're right, for that reason, I think they're really fun and really interesting to actually like listen carefully to what's going on in there.
Okay, so what are things we should be listening carefully to?
Well, the third movement here is a theme and variations is how it's structured. And now looking at the page, at the top of the page, what's interesting is...
Well, we only have 2 voices.
And he doesn't say that, right? So like straight away, it's very strange. Like very, very often the composer would write tema con variazioni or something, like this is a theme and variations. Not always, but it would be typical. Actually, Beethoven does that a lot. And then here, Haydn doesn't even mark it as such. He just says andante. And then you're absolutely right. We only have 2 voices. The movement starts as a duet, between the first violin and the cello, which is strange on a few levels, you know?
Yeah, that's unusual.
Like if you really want a harmonious duo, I don't know, like two violins or maybe the inner voices or something.
Yeah, we tend to have the lower voices or the upper voices or the two middle voices.
Yeah.
Yes, but not the...
This is not a super traditional duo pairing with nothing else
not
going.
the perimeter voices.
Exactly. Yes, and that's really how it feels. It feels like you're in the middle of the perimeter voices.
Yeah,
That's a great way of putting it.
Okay.
Yeah, and not only that, but he also writes mezzo voce right here, which means like the middle of the voice, and which is ironic without any inner voices playing right now, but
Oh, very much so.
and that's not actually what it means, but it's like the middle of the voice, the center of the voice. He's basically saying, don't overplay this.
Just
Yeah,
Yeah.
like sort of sung to oneself kind of energy. And so that's just really interesting. Like it's very unassuming. He's not throwing the form in our faces. We're starting with a duo. And it's just this lovely tune. It's straight away ornamented quite simply.
I can see it.
Yeah, and then as we proceed, like you and I know this is a theme in variations, but first-time listener probably doesn't know that. And then normally what we get in theme and variations is like a pretty clear cadence, a stoppage, and then we start again, and it's clearly a new version of the same thing.
Right.
As a matter of fact, we see that in Opus 76, his previous set, the famous Emperor Quartet, where Viennese national anthem is the theme of that movement. He composed it, and we get like, here's the theme, stop. Here's a variation, stop.
Got it.
Here's another one, stop. And even on the page, they're marked as variation 1, variation. You know, it's just like,
Okay.
he lets us in on it. Here, he's not letting us in on it. It's totally just through composed. It's lovely the way the variations sort of ooze into one another. And you can see here at the bottom of the page, the inner voices come in sort of mid-phrase. It's just all these delineations are obscured. And it's like he's taking a form and he's stretching it into something more abstract, which for him, this version of abstraction is very inventive. Like it's not clearly done. And then as the movement proceeds, you know, things become more ornamented. We have some sort of Beethovenian dynamic contrasts in the first variation.
This with the dynamics, yeah.
Yeah, and he's messing around with like a trio texture here in this variation. These sforzando going on here. You know, it's interesting. It almost smells like Beethoven is teaching him a little bit, or I don't know. It's Beethovenian stuff, and we know at this time they were hanging out together in a room talking about composing. So who influenced who? I don't know. But
well, it makes sense. It would be like going to someone's house and they make a recipe.
Yeah,
and
you're like,
I never used saffron before. What? I'm going to try that too.
Yeah, and it becomes eventually irrelevant whose idea it was.
Exactly, but I mean, I can see why that would happen. It would just sort of bleed into the work that they're doing. So that's very interesting. I like that idea that they did that.
So Haydn is just, you know, his version of pushing the boundary here is subtlety.
Okay.
Subtlety, which is so classical with a capital C, right? You know, and it's very elegant. And I remember earlier in the season, we heard an Opus 20 string quartet where the weirdnesses were pretty in your face, like kind of alarming. And
was this the one with the jokes?
Yes, like da 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 da
da
in the last one. Yeah, just totally out of nowhere. And so it's cool to see this more developed version of him. In my opinion, it sounds a little more organic and knit into the way he's composing rather than kind of wedged in there.
I was gonna say, it's almost like he relaxed a little.
He did. He.
It was like he was like, boy, I've been doing a lot, or like maybe other stuff. Maybe I just need to let go.
Yeah.
Just let it kind of happen.
Flow. Let it happen. Right. Yeah. He's not trying to fit it into a box, and he's not so conscious of breaking the box either. It's just like, this is how we do it now.
Well, he wasn't a box breaker.
Right. He was a box builder.
He was a box builder. Yes, he was.
And so this slow movement is something we'd expect from Mozart. It's more similar to Mozart, at least. And by this point, we think in the lineage of things that Haydn came before Mozart, and that Mozart kind of picked up the mantle, and then Beethoven picked up the mantle. But timeline-wise, actually, this period is very dense. So, like, by this point, at the end of Haydn's life, Mozart has been dead for almost 10 years.
Okay.
So Mozart has come and gone within Haydn's lifetime. And there's no doubt that Haydn would have been influenced by what Mozart was doing. And of course, Mozart is also heavily influenced by what Haydn was doing. So much, like he craved Haydn's approval for Haydn to publicly say, check this guy out, he's so good. Mozart never really got that affirmation, right? But there's interplay. It's not one and then the other. They're working at, and then of course you have Beethoven in the mix now too. Beethoven is studying with Haydn and composing his first string quartets while Haydn is composing this string quartet. So like Mozart's dead, but he's also so in the room with Haydn and Beethoven at the time. And like we know Beethoven loved Mozart. The convergence of those three composers is very real right now at this point in history.
So you already identified some ways that Haydn was using some Beethovenian elements.
Yeah.
And you're saying you think he's sounding Mozart-y here?
The lyricism, the rhythmic creativity, the kind of operatic textures that the quartet is producing here, like to me it's sounding a lot like Mozart with some Beethoven tendencies in there, but it's Haydn writing it. You know, it's crazy.
So my imagination says, so is this maybe the only way that Haydn could have said, you know, check this guy out, by actually emulating him in some way? I mean,
that's I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's pretty poetic. That in some sense, by, you know, taking a little bit of genetic material or some inspiration from the things Mozart was doing, he kind of honors him after death. I haven't thought of it that way, but it's very...
I mean, especially since you were saying that, and I mean, I can sort of see how the Beethovenian things are really more salt and pepper and everything. They're just kind of like a little sprinkle here and there. But if you're saying that the heart of it feels more like Mozart, then maybe he was smiling, you know, wherever he was at anyway.
Yeah, he was like...
I knew you were going to
got my way. You'd come around.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then cantankerous young Beethoven is in the room like, Haydn, check this guy out. You know, it's like elementary school classroom where all the kids come in singing like whatever's on the radio those days. And Haydn's like, oh, no. Mozart, really? Okay. And then at some point ends up...
He gets it.
Actually, yeah, this is pretty good. All right.
There are some incredibly beautiful things that Mozart wrote that even I wouldn't have thought he had written. Yeah. Not that I didn't. I mean, just when I started learning more of his repertoire, I was just like, "Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
He wrote that?" I was like shockingly ripping my heart out. Beautiful.
I know.
I mean,
and like the Mozart Requiem, for example, is also just like shocking and startling in so many ways.
Oh, the Requiem is incredible.
Yeah, and like Don Giovanni too. I mean, like Mozart was doing. But at the end of his life, some more outlandish things than I think Haydn is doing here. But like, that's Haydn, right? He built the era, he built the period, and so he's still very much tied to the origins, the roots of classical style, more so than Mozart. But in a way, it's kind of beautiful that he's taking the influence of that experimentation and accepting it.
Yes. So this slow movement is, you think, or you're saying, is embodying something really special about this last quartet.
I think so. I find it very touching, very organic, very natural, very kind of very personally unfolding, with fewer structural limitations, and it allows him to assimilate in a way at the end of his life all the other stuff that's going on, and it's cool. It's humble. I think it's humble.
So I was going to say, I know I'm very big on the metaphors. I do this all the time, but you're right. He's a box builder, and I'm wondering, it's almost like, because you said he doesn't have all the same ornamentation or, you know, instructional phrases and things, and a little simpler at the beginning, just that perimeter.
Peripheral.
Do you think he was maybe just emptying the box?
Yeah.
And then just saying, you know what? Maybe the box is just beautiful all by itself.
Yeah. And maybe he's kind of like putting Beethoven's hand into the hand of Mozart and saying,
And drawing some, Beethoven graffiti.
yeah, right.
Beethoven graffiti in the
Yeah,
box.
he's like, all right, you guys talk, I'm out.
Some little notes and kiss and put it in the box. It's wondering. It's an interesting way of looking at it.
And maybe there's like a lesson to Beethoven in here too.
Oh, really?
Maybe, I don't know, where like we're invoking Mozart, and at the same time there's some of this Beethovenian reassessment of boundaries, and maybe this is like poeticizing it, but it could be Haydn kind of showing the next generation, like, yeah, you've go ahead, plug yourselves in to the innovation here. And so maybe in a way this is empowering to Beethoven to see that like he gets sort of this kind of genteel nod to go ahead and freak out.
We know Beethoven was breaking boxes and building boxes and breaking and building. Did Mozart ever do any of the emulating Beethoven or Haydn? I mean, but Mozart wrote some string quartets for Haydn, right?
Oh, he did.
Yes.
Yeah, to try and get
dedicated
Haydn's attention.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Which I'm sure Haydn heard them, but it did not have the effect Mozart wanted. It was
exactly.
like, wow, this guy's insane. Everybody should listen to. That didn't happen.
But he wasn't necessarily emulating Haydn's style. He was just, was he?
He was a bit. He was, and this is where I think Mozart as an innovator is really clever, because he is able to take the style of Haydn, create something that is clearly and distinctly an homage to Haydn, and make it sound distinctly like Mozart, which is exactly what he wanted to happen historically, right? So Mozart's Haydn quartets, they were dedicated to Haydn, so we call them Mozart's Haydn quartets, are like these perfect representations of, saying like, yes, pass me the torch. Look how well I can do this. How well I can honor you and be me.
At the same time.
At the same time. And it just doesn't hit. It just doesn't. They're fantastic pieces. Like, they're great pieces, but it doesn't have the historical effect he was hoping.
Understood. I'm just laughing to myself right now because we're supposed to be talking about Haydn and Beethoven, and yet we're still landing on Mozart.
Okay.
And I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying this is what's interesting, because
in my opinion, and we haven't even started on Brahms yet, but in my opinion, the thesis of this concert, like, this is a concert about Mozart.
Wow.
Without a lick of Mozart on the program.
That is crazy.
So I think it's just really smart, really cool programming.
Well, that's just so interesting, because so you're saying this one, we're at the first one, the Haydn one, that you're saying there's just this sort of language and essence of Mozart through it.
Yeah.
Yes, with some Beethoven in there.
Yeah.
So does this mean it's a good moment to go to
transition to Beethoven?
Yeah,
I think so. And so, Haydn, we can kind of speculate that he was influenced by Mozart. Beethoven, we know he was studying Mozart's quartets as he prepared to write his first quartets. Like, we know that. Not just Haydn. He was studying Haydn, he was studying Mozart, and he was bringing Mozart to Haydn, saying, look at this. And I'm sure it wasn't the first time Haydn had heard and studied Mozart, but Beethoven, we know, was totally freaked out by Mozart in a good way. Like, he was geeking out over Mozart.
I see. So he was like, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like we would be doing, like, when we hear some new artist or something and saying, oh my gosh, you have to hear this.
Check it out. Right, it is. Exactly. And it's Beethoven showing up to a lesson with Haydn being like, have you seen this? And I was like, yeah, yes. Okay.
Do we have to talk about Mozart?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And like, thank goodness it's not Schubert today, And so Beethoven is really who brings Mozart into the room, interestingly.
Okay.
And
this one is, it's what, 1802. But you said it might be.
It's plausible that it was the first quartet he actually composed.
It's plausible.
It was published the second in the set of 6.
Okay.
Opus 18 is a chunk of 6. Like we said, they tend to come in 6s. This is published as the second of the set, but historians think it was actually written first.
Well, it's still an extremely early one. I mean, on the edge of early, so either one. So,
and in my opinion, actually, it's sort of the most classical of Beethoven's quartets. So,
meaning the classical style.
Yeah. Especially the first movement. Like, the nickname of this quartet is Compliments.
Complimenti, yes.
Oh, is that even in the program? Good for you. And it's because the phrase structure is so classical, like archetypally classical, that it sounds like two people complimenting each other, and that sort of genteel conversational.
Really?
Yeah. And Ba-dum, ba-bum, ba-bum. Bum, ba, da, 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 dee, dum. Bum, ba, da, da, dee, da, da.
So they're just like a nice interplay.
Oh, this is lovely. How lovely is this? You know, just like, and yeah, and we know he kind of patterned that sort of phrase structure on Mozart. Like, there's another quartet of Mozart's that much more informally than this Beethoven quartet, the nickname Compliments. And like, we know Beethoven was studying that. So there's some stenciling going on here.
That's interesting.
Yeah, totally is.
I had no, I mean, I'm still learning a lot, of course, but I had no idea that Beethoven was so enthralled with Mozart.
Yeah, totally.
Which he should have been.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had no idea that he was really so much a fan.
Yeah, totally super fan. Like,
because he's so different. He's so different from...
He is.
From Mozart.
And that's what I find fascinating about this quartet, is the first movement is the very compliments, you know, and there's so much more virtuosity going on in there. So, like, we can tell it's Beethoven.
Yeah.
But, it sounds like Mozart. And then the second movement is this beautiful Adagio cantabile, slow movement again, which is, like, there's nothing weird about that, right? And it starts, and it sounds again like a Mozart quartet. You know, it's like everything you would expect it to be. First violinist doing some miniature cadenzas here, and like textbook homophony.
So is the fact that it's sort of Mozart sounding because they're arpeggio type of style? I mean, he did a lot of arpeggio. Is that what you're saying?
That's a big thing in these sort of like lyrical intervals, the soaring melody, and then this ornamentation, the kind of scalar leading into cadences and stuff.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I remember playing it, but...
Yeah, right, exactly. It's this sort of like operatic manifestation in instrumental music is like super Mozart-y. And... also super Beethoven-y, right?
I love our adjectives we've been using.
Yeah, I know.
Mozarty and Beethovenian and whatever.
Yeah.
Haydnesque? Are we going to go that way?
Haydnish, Haydnisto. Yeah. But now, you know, so Haydn took his slow movement and he sort of blended the boundaries of form of the theme and variations, and he makes it less obvious that's what we're doing. So in this slow movement, okay, Now this is Beethoven, right? In the middle of the slow movement, he slams an allegro in.
Yeah.
This kind of hoedowny, chaotic. The meter is not very clear. It's like he's lured you into the world of Mozart. And
I was going to say he's messing up my whole... I want to breathe and just relax, and he's throwing something in there to make it go.
He utterly ruins it. Hey, and then we get like back to tempo primo after we have this freak out.
Yes.
And like look at the cello. You're just like, what? Really? What? We're going back to this after what you just did? And then take a look at the ornamentations of the first violin. It becomes even more outlandish, almost comically so.
I mean, that's a lot of black.
Yeah. And then we see it in the cello, which is not where, like, Mozart wouldn't have done that.
No.
Yeah, and just look at this. It's a cello party. And then
it certainly is.
Yeah, and then the movement comes to
It's more like a bash.
Yeah, it is. And so he takes the slow movement, and he's not just kind of obscuring the typical form for the second movement. He's created a new one. We've got this like ABA sandwich within a slow movement. That's usually what we get in the middle movement scherzo. And he's kind of smooshing the two concepts together.
Thank you, Beethoven.
Yeah, right. And he's doing it like sort of politely, but very comedically. And so we see, you know, Haydn, I can just see them like sharing these pieces with each other in a lesson, and Haydn being like, look at the artistry with which I've crafted these transitions to obscure the formal structure. And Beethoven's like, yeah, cool, check it out. I put a new movement in the middle of it. You know, it's like a red crayon or something, you know.
Sorry.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, okay. All right, you do you. Good job, kid.
Imagine Haydn just like rolling his eyes.
Yeah, I know. He was, really? Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. And then
that would have been amazing to be in those conversations.
I know, to be a fly on the wall. It would have been so interesting, I think. Or maybe it wouldn't have. I don't know.
So many parts of history we miss, and it's just,
I know. And so these two pieces are like they are literally in the oven at the same time.
Right.
And Haydn's last and Beethoven's first, and like there's no doubt pre-published versions of the piece were in the same room.
Well, they both did something a little different, not entirely, but I mean, Haydn departed somewhat from his typical form.
Yeah.
And Beethoven was just kind of starting. And he had Mozart in his head.
Right.
And he may have had some of Haydn in his head, but it sounded like he might have had, I don't know. I was just sort of sillily, if that's a word, imagining a dare between them, like, okay, you do something different.
No, you do something
different.
No,
yeah,
you
do it. And then just kind of seeing what they came up with.
Yeah. It would have been really interesting to see the dynamic, the social dynamic.
Oh, well, that's too bad, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, this slow movement is the first sort of Beethoven pulling off the veil that this is going to be not a
what you think
traditional
it's going to
string
be?
quartet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, sure enough, in the scherzo, the third movement, actually quite traditional in the way it's constructed. Formally, the gestures are very classical. But I think the tip-off that it's Beethoven comes with like, the difficulty and the craziness of every single one of the individual parts. Like jump-a-dum, bump-a-dum, jump-a-dum, pa-dum, jump-a-dum, bump-a-dum, jump-a-dum, oh, wow, okay,
Yeah.
Geez. And then we get that in the trio, bum pa, shum pum 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 pum. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm classical, I swear, and then hits you in the face. And then it comes careening to a close, So it's lovely.
Short.
It's still quite classical. It's very brief. It's very tossed off and kind of frazzling. Mm-hmm. And all the players are exhausted by that point. And then we get the finale here. And right, Allegro molto, quasi presto. I remember talking about a previous concert. We observed that Beethoven is so much more specific in his verbiage of movements and expressive instructions. Right. And we start to see that here. And of course, basically what he's saying, allegro molto, very allegro, very lively, quasi presto, almost just fast, like really fast. So he's basically saying, just play as fast as you can, if you don't mind. Right? And you're like, okay. And it's a total barn burner of a movement. The inner voices are absolutely spastic. And it's a rondo, so we hear the same melody like a refrain come in between. We have these really Picasso-esque harmonic journeys and just these flickers of unbelievable virtuoso playing, like everybody's playing a concerto all at once kind of energy. And then boom, and it's over. And you're like, okay, Beethoven has arrived. We're there. Yeah, like the compliments have ended. Everybody's screaming at the same time. And,
what kind of effect do you think this had on people? I mean, when this came out, was Haydn still alive?
Yes. I'm 99% sure.
Okay. Yeah. So when this premiered, is there any record of the audience's responses? Or?
I don't know. I have no idea, but
because you said he's arrived. I mean,
right. And so that's the question too, is like, how famous was he at this point? Like, we know Beethoven became very famous over the course of his life because of his patronage. And these quartets are dedicated to some court noble. Yeah. So there's no doubt there was like a premiere that was a big deal. These were dedicated to these royals, and there were a whole bunch of people in that room in their wigs and their powders, and then a string quartet arrived and freaked out, and everybody was I hear this, I know what's coming, and at the end of the piece, I still feel
really
overwhelmed by what just happened in a really joyful way. But I was like, whoa, okay, thank you. Take a break. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know there was a lot of politics back then, like how the patronage things happened. Yeah. So, and I mean, we even had a conversation about it last season about they weren't necessarily the most musically educated bunch.
Potentially.
Some
more than others.
Some more than others. Yeah. I don't mean that they were completely ignorant, but I mean, Do you think they would have really appreciated this when they first heard it, about what it really meant?
I don't
I doubt it.
Historically, I doubt it. Like hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
I think it would have been like, here's Haydn's protege. Get ready. Yay. And then, the rest is history. But by this point, Opus 18, he's already composed violin sonatas. He's composed a lot for the piano. So, I'm sure people knew who he was, but
this was like a different thing. So, of all the forms that exist, I mean, I know there's so many, but do you think that the string quartet has any real novelty compared to all the other forms that really, I don't know, like would we be putting something like this in like a time capsule? Because it's so special, meaning the string quartet itself? Or, I mean,
like the instrumentation or
the orchestration, I mean, all of it. I mean, is there something just so special about string quartets themselves that everybody should hear one in a lifetime kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, okay. So right. Like,
I'm not sure my question. Yes.
I'm a string quartet player, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I teach chamber music for a little bit. So my answer is, of course. And like, okay, it's not just because I like them, but I think compositionally, like from far before that point, composers have been entranced with 4-part harmony and counterpoint. And vocally. That's what we get here. Vocally, the way those textures work, it's a great balance between voices not having too much overlap to sound redundant, but at the same time, there's enough fullness there that between cello and first violin, this sounds like a single organism. And so I think that's at the essence of the string quartet, why it's so usable, is because it's just a great balance of full enough but not cluttered, and the theatrics and the drama of having 4 unified yet independent voices and players, and not only independent players but 3 different instruments represented, means you have a whole spectrum of super organismal writing and super fracture writing that composers can live on that spectrum, where you have, this is the ensemble sounding like a cohesive, singular thing. And then you can also have the 4 players, everybody out on their own virtuosic limb, every instrument sounding unique, either simultaneously or 1 at a time or 2 at a time or 3 at a time. You have so many permutations of breaking open that organism or tightening it up that the possibilities are sort of endless, and the colors are endless. And, I'm partial to string instruments. There's so much variety that's possible to create on a single instrument that quadruple that effect with the ability to homogenize and diversify. It's just, how can you not want to write for that?
Well, and as you were talking, I realized I don't know if I asked my question as clearly as I was thinking, but of all the forms in classical music, do you think this one has been the most developed? I mean, what's the arc of the development of a symphony? I mean, we have symphonies, but we don't have as many string quartets.
Right.
I mean, don't we have more string quartets than we have symphonies?
I don't know the data. I would imagine we have more symphonies than string quartets.
Really?
Yeah. Well, and like this is where like the fine line gets blurred, right? Like with Haydn, he really invents the string quartet. He's the person that says this 4 permutation instrument thing. The symphony evolved more murkily. Like we have, for example, like take Bach's Brandenburg concertos. Yeah. Where that's for many intents and purposes an orchestra. Yeah. Therefore a progenitor of the symphony. Right. And closely resembles it. We have like like Corelli, Vivaldi, the Italian Baroque, the concerti. Like it's a soloist with a very small orchestra of strings with basso continuo harpsichord. That's a proto-symphony. Before Haydn starts writing all these symphonies, you have Stamitz, who's kind of bringing in opera. From Monteverdi onwards, has an ensemble, a larger than chamber music ensemble of strings, basso continuo, winds oftentimes. So we have all these kind of prototype versions of the symphony orchestra. Yeah. That like yeah, we're not calling what we write for them a symphony until, a couple hundred years into that development. But for all intents and purposes, that's pretty well developed.
It's the instruments themselves that sort of form that same kind of sound.
Right. And so you could make an argument that everything evolving into the symphony, capital S, is some version of the symphony's DNA, lowercase s.
So do you think this is harder to rate for, the string quartet?
I have no idea.
Okay, well,
I have no idea. I would find it challenging to spin gold out of fewer ingredients, but I don't know, but at the same time, it's hard to make more voices meaningful, which is kind of what you have in an orchestra, is you have many, many different voices. Okay, so you have all of them. Each one has to be there for a reason. And there's a challenge in that too.
Well, then how grateful we are for all the brave composers who championed all the things that they did. I mean, they had to have had this really, strong, urge and belief to do this. So how lucky are we?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And and speaking of urge and belief, Brahms.
Yes. Brahms. I was going to say, we're going to go, so urge and belief is Brahms?
More like urge and
so this is
psychosis when it comes to Brahms.
So this is 51-2.
51-2, yeah. So Brahms wrote 3 string quartets. He wrote the first 2 as a set, Opus 51, number 1, 51, number 2. So this is the second of that initial set.
I mean, in his whole life?
Mm-hmm. Right. He only wrote 3. And then he wrote the B-flat quartet, I think, 3 years later. So they come pretty quickly. And like, wow, what's wrong with him? Why didn't he get around to the string quartet until later? Same deal with the symphony, right? Like, he didn't write his first symphony until he was like 40, 45 years old, right? And
so a late bloomer. In a way?
In a way. Like, he spent his whole early career on a lot of piano music. Like, there's a lot he's doing in his early life, but there's a really important psychological component, which is Beethoven. So Beethoven freaks out and, like, creates the Romantic period, dies, and then composers are sort of like,
what do we do now?
What do we do now? Yeah, right. And Beethoven was extremely famous. He was probably the most famous composer upon his death. Don't quote me on that. There's no data. But he was extremely famous when he died. And we get the 9th Symphony, which is just like, look at this gigantic spectacle of a thing. Right, dead. And then, what now? And the composer who kind of answers the call a little bit is Mendelssohn.
Yes.
Who says, okay, I can use that chromatic harmony, but I'm going to kind of classicize it a little bit. We get similar harmonic tools that Beethoven used, but they're a lot more lyrical. They're a lot kind of like, we hear textures like we would get in Mozart, for example, in Mendelssohn. And so he's kind of putting Beethoven on ice a little bit and saying, like, yeah, we can use these tools. These tools are good. These work. But my way of reckoning with Beethoven is to use them completely differently.
Got it.
And then we have Schumann, who's in the mix too, who again is like, all right, we're in the world of Beethoven's shadow. He's writing very lyrically. He's writing very pianistically. He's exploring in very different ways. He's waxing poetic. He's also very historically oriented. Like, he's doing a lot of research and music critique. He's not academic, but he's a bit academic. He's a thinker. And then Brahms, a student of Schumann, comes into the equation, and he's a virtuoso pianist. He's, a pretty, like, traumatized person, honestly. Like, his upbringing in like an Austro-Hungarian family, which is not a particularly, you don't fit super cleanly into society at that point with that sort of background and the Hungarian element. And then, he grows up having, like, quite poor and having to make a living by playing the piano in houses of ill repute. Like, so Brahms spends a huge developmental chunk of his life in an extremely unpleasant place, being treated poorly, and having like, so like he's comes to life with a lot of baggage, and the piano is kind of his.
It's got an anchor for him, probably.
Yeah.
Probably what he needed to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. And then of course you have the shadow of Beethoven still, and nobody has squarely stepped into it just yet. So like take all of that into account, and yeah, I can see how it would take a pretty long while for you to feel confident going toe to toe with the legacy of Beethoven. And
Yeah.
he finally does it, and he does it in his first symphony, which sort of affectionately people call Beethoven's 10th. Because Brahms's way of stepping into the shadow was to emulate and to do homage to Beethoven by saying, look, and he even quotes the Ninth Symphony in his first symphony.
Well, that kind of makes sense because he's trying to probably do something that's a little familiar before people kind of find out what else he's going to do.
Right, and then
Right.
he pushes.
Yeah,
Then he pushes up, and
that's reasonable.
yeah, and that his getting into string quartets kind of resembles that trajectory too, where, around the same time he finally writes the first symphony, he writes the first two string quartets. Again, like you're stepping into the shadow of Beethoven at that point. Like, yes, Mendelssohn, Schumann wrote symphonies, Schubert, and string quartets, all that, but he's doing it in a much stylistically more similar way to Beethoven.
I had no idea that he had such a difficult life.
He had a rough, and like, he did well for himself, and he had, like one of the most famous kind of composer relationships of all time is Brahms and the Schumanns. When Robert Schumann and Clara, like, talk about a really morally principled way of handling yourself, and that's it, and it's just so Brahms is like kind of a manifestation of the whole capital R romantic ethos of like struggle and earnestness and overcoming nature. It's just, he belonged in that period. But being a student of Schumann, he comes from this very historically aware school of thought. And so Brahms is very classical, honestly, by comparison with a lot of other composers who are working in the 1860s, 70s, 80s, 90s, like Franz Liszt, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Right. He's starting to write these large-scale tone poems that are sounding much more far-flung already. So we're like hurdling Beethoven in that case. And Brahms is like, no, wait for me. Here I am. Yeah. And he's fascinated by Bach. This is one of the first generations that's looking back on Bach and going, whoa, that's cool. Yeah, this is where we're at. We're like, historically, we're starting to kind of cycle. Not starting, that happens all throughout history, but this is an interesting cycle where we're looking back at the Baroque period now and the Romantic period, and it's really interesting.
Well, we talked about that. You've talked about many times that we go like more ornamental, and then we get more spare. And we kind of go back and forth. We can go back and forth. So, but that's interesting that that does sort of make sense. It's sort of like if you go back far enough and you sort of reinvent another version of that, it's probably going to be coming back again.
Eventually, yeah, right. Like eventually the pendulum moves back and Brahms is like, here I am.
Forgotten it long enough that it'll seem fresh again.
Yeah, it's like,
That's
right. It's maybe that's it. It's a little less fresh. Time heals all.
Yeah. So
self-consciousness.
So this particular Brahms.
Yeah.
Was there? You said you were looking at the slow movements.
Right.
So which one we're looking at the Andante?
The Andante Moderato. Yeah, the second move here. And so again, there's evidence. Like we know that Brahms, being so historically self-conscious, it's not just Beethoven that he feels in the shadow of. It's also Mozart. He's studying Mozart very carefully as he figures out how to write his first quartets. Very carefully. At the encouragement of Schumann, I believe, who said, like, you've got to understand this before you can do this. And yeah, interesting.
Fascinating.
Right? Yeah. So again, it's like Mozart's in the room. This whole program, even though we're not hearing a lick of Mozart.
He's there's some little whisper of him, or even a little tiny shout.
Yeah.
That he's in there.
He's in there. Yeah. And this movement is, like just visually on the page, we can tell it's more intricate and thick and dense. That's Brahms. That's late Beethoven and Brahms. Like this, okay, like we see that here. But as you listen to the lyricism, Ti da 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 di da. Okay. Hello, lyricism, right? Mozart, we were talking about it in Haydn. They're like, oh, this is a little bit operatic. Hello. Right? Here it is again. And then my favorite thing about this opening actually is what happens in the ciola, the viola and the cello. We get this super intricate scalar thing. This is very Brahms-ish, that we get this web of complex counterpoint
The
going
texture is like very,
which is sort of Bachish
yeah.
as well, right? Like this looks sort of just like a squished Bach chorale. A little bit, the way the counterpoint, and then when the second violin finally comes in, and it's got the Beethovenian ebb and flow.
I've never seen this word before.
Bratsche.
Bratsche, that's the viola?
German for viola.
I did not know that.
Yeah, the shoulder.
And they were not brats.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it doesn't mean that.
Yeah.
So my first thought here, was it's immediately seems very busy.
Yes.
For a slow movement.
Yes.
I mean, I'm used to the legato phrases and maybe just a little ornament here and there, but this is much busier than I was thinking it would be.
Yeah.
Does it stay busy?
It does. It really does.
Oh my goodness.
Right. And like if we look here, like getting into rehearsal B, for example.
Yeah.
Like there's syncopation all over the place. This is very Brahms-ish.
But it's still slow movement.
Right. So it's like agitating a thick texture that's in slow motion, but it's got this kind of push and pull, this kind of rich density about it that is extremely Brahms. And that's kind of his pull on Beethoven, is late Beethoven. We get density through homogeneity, as you mentioned. Like here's everybody doing this really dense thing, expanding the texture, right? Or it's extremely like cluttered, not cluttered, but you know what I mean? Like the grosse fuga.
Yeah.
Da 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 da. Everybody jumping in on the pile.
Right. Yeah.
And Brahms, on the other hand, is creating that dark, dense lusciousness through variety and push and pull in the texture as opposed to homogeneity.
So he's not exactly like, it's not like a shout. It's like I said, it's just this. I'm gonna have to like listen to it to try to find that. I'm not saying it's not there. I mean, I'm just saying just to see what he's almost like it's. Would you say it's fighting with itself, or it's just really more just expanding and stretching?
Love that, and like there's an inner tension, not necessarily fighting, but it's like pulling.
Just stretching and pull. Just the normal contraction and release that you would have with something.
And every harmony tastes like a different flavor of like saltwater taffy. Ooh, wow. And then like that Willy Wonka chewing gum where like every bite is like a different flavor.
The everlasting gobstop?
Yeah, where you're just like, ooh, what's this? Wow. Oh, and it's almost too much to really perceive, but like he's not hitting you over the head with it. Sometimes he does, not here. And so it's fascinating. It's like looking at a piece of art where you can never possibly notice all the cool details. And, so like, how is he creating that? It's like three big ways that I see. One of them is by obscuring the beat, obscuring the pulse. So like this spot here, the syncopations before B, like the inner voices are completely avoiding playing on the beat for a while. The cello is keeping us anchored.
With this upper line.
Right. And and what's cool about the upper line too, this is the other thing, is there's a lot of polyrhythm going on here. In other words, he's subdividing the beat in multiple ways that don't line up with each other. So like at the end of measure 28 here.
Okay, that's like Chopin.
Super Chopinish.
Yeah. Because I'm playing Chopin. That's exactly what you have to do. You have to like 34 notes or something into the middle of whatever you're. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's
right. And it doesn't map onto something else.
Exactly. So was Chopin writing before he wrote this?
I believe they were roughly
contemporaries.
I think Chopin might have come a little early.
Because that was the first time he was at the. I mean, I remember it was like messing with my mind every time I had to deal with a Chopin.
And Beethoven did a lot of that too, where you have this like very fluid, like here, cram 28 notes into a beat, but Brahms is doing where we have like 3 against 2, or 4 against 3 for prolonged amounts of time. That creates this inner viscosity.
Yeah, which would mess with your brain as you're playing with it.
Yeah, you
almost
well,
get to the point you have to feel it. You can't even think it.
yeah, totally.
You just
Totally.
can't even think
Because
it
it's
at all.
deliberately like no, not imprecise, but abstract. Deliberately abstract.
It's deliberately non-measured in an equal way so that you maybe have to feel it versus
Right.
oh, I just whacked my sorry.
That's how exciting it is, listeners.
Exactly.
Yeah. And he's also harmony is kind of the third big way that Brahms creates this sort of fleshy viscosity, is that like, even straight away from the very beginning, look at all the accidentals in the music.
Yeah, I was
Just
seeing those.
Immediately you have all of these non-chord tones, or like, but late Beethoven, we talked about chromatic harmony, where like everything is sort of readily accessible. Brahms is escalating that notion. And so we end up with a lot of incidental harmonies. So harmonies that are created by multiple lines and they're non-chord tones.
Yes.
We hear those at the same time, and we have a chance to perceive a harmony that may not actually be participating in the chord progression.
Right.
You get these flashes of, oh, what was that harmony? And then it goes.
As you're leaving and heading somewhere.
Yeah, and it creates this undulation. And then when you hear like a true harmonic pillar in the phrase, it's like an arrival. It's a relief. You've earned it. It creates that sense of like struggle and inner conflict.
Right. So it's satisfying at that point.
The push and the pull.
We got there.
Yeah. And it's amazing.
So have you played this one before?
Yes.
Okay. First or second?
First.
Really?
Yeah, grad school. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The outer movements in particular contain a lot of pyrotechnics that, like in Beethoven, just executing it is extremely demanding. I would say in Brahms, there's an additional, or like a version of the challenge of putting it together into a quartet, because there's so much activity, there's so much going on, it's so densely built that making it sound unified is a huge challenge, because you have to be so precise about the way you approach every harmony, the way you create hierarchy between harmonies, the way you allow the music in every single moment. You have to know whether it's relenting or it's building, and how to find the balance between precise playing vertically and also the ambiguity that he's suggesting. And at the same time, you need to clarify the texture, so I as a listener can tell what's a primary voice. Where's this melody? We can't bury it. But at the same time, the texture is begging for richness. How do you organize that sonically as a quartet? Brahms is a huge project, because that has to be so precisely crafted in every moment. And he's changing the texture constantly. I'm going to say it's infuriating. It's not. I love it. But it's just like everyone, you're like, yeah, good for, that was cool. We sounded great in that bar. And then the next bar, I'm like, huh. Again, it's totally different. And you just, and it is, you really have to.
So in a way, it's maybe good he didn't write too many, because this is probably plenty to work with.
I don't know, but
I mean, as the instrument players
themselves, right? I would love more Brahms quartets, but I mean, I can see how he didn't get, look at all this information. Like, you don't whip these off.
No. And I didn't mean that we couldn't have used more. I'm just saying, in a way, it sounds like the challenge is enough for what
you got to deal with here.
You got enough to deal with these few.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm trying to remember the other pieces that he did. He did the Requiem, right?
He did.
And he only did the 4 symphonies, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Third's my favorite.
Oh, I love the third. Good choice. Ooh, okay. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Hot take.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are on the Brahms 4 train.
Oh, no, I am on the Brahms 3 train. Are you kidding? I don't, and you said I wrote a lot of piano music. I mean, I'm just naming the more famous things I know of Brahms. So he only did 3. So what else did he write?
He wrote a lot of other extended chamber music. Like, he wrote a clarinet quintet. He wrote a pair of sextets, string sextets. Okay. He wrote 2 viola quintets.
Oh, good for him.
Quartet plus viola. Good for him. He wrote a few piano trios. He wrote the piano quintet, piano quartets. So he's really quite diverse in the type of chamber music he's writing.
He played piano, you said.
Mm-hmm.
Did he play anything else?
I don't think he's not well known for playing anything else, but maybe he did.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, like Mozart,
Played-
obviously great pianist, also a violinist,
and a violist.
known to play the viola too. Dvorak, same deal. Brahms, I don't know. It's not.
I was just wondering.
Yeah.
I was wondering.
Yeah.
So he dabbled.
Yeah, he dabbled in like in a very obsessive sort of way. Like we don't dabble lightly.
No.
We dabble very intensely.
Yes, I get it. No, what you play of his, it's worth playing. It's worth. Not that the other composers aren't, but it seems like he came at an interesting juncture.
Yeah.
In the whole development of music, so that you said in the Romantic period and.
Yeah.
Being very so it's like he's carried elements from the classical, it seems, as well as the Romantic.
Totally. And actually this is a great sort of notion to kind of put a period on Brahms, because he comes at this time when finally we're stepping into Beethoven, which is inevitable. And Brahms has managed to innovate on Beethoven, which means he's controversial at the time for being so obsessed with the past. So because he's actually like an inevitable transformation on Beethoven, the notion of which is very futuristic and future oriented, actually he came to represent sort of like a historical entrenchment almost, where it's like, why are we looking at the past? We need to look at the future. And you're like, well, but Brahms is the future. He's looking at the future, and he is very paradigmatic, like, or not
the paradigm.
Oxymoronic. Yeah, where you're like, yeah, okay, but he is the evolution. But at the same time, because he is an evolution, he's also tied to the past. And does that make him dated? You know what I mean? And like this is the controversy at this time. And you have Brahms and you have like Franz Liszt. Franz Liszt is like, who cares what happened back then? This is what we're doing now. And Brahms is like, no, but that's cool.
So he's the only one who's really a little more not mired, but a little more anchored in the past.
Not the only one, but he's part of that cadre.
Cadre.
And this comes at a time when this, like, if we were forced to lay out an evolution or like a teleology of music, up till this point, it's like a little bit linear because we tend to focus on the German tradition,
yes,
which was quite linear in this way. This is the point where we have no choice but to start thinking in a much more branching way. And this is really like a big first branch point, where it's like the folks that are concerned with that evolution and the folks who are concerned with nothing but where we're going. And so like in the world of Brahms, like you've got Tchaikovsky, who's like, this is very much anchored in that Austro-German tradition, even though he's Russian. This is our camp. And then you've got like the Franz Liszt, the Richard Strauss, these folks who are absolutely screaming headlong for what comes next. And then those branches, we start to see nationalism. We start to see really, 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 really distinct, intentionally distinct styles of composing from different nations. And more nations are jumping into the Western classical music bucket. Like we have the Finnish with Sibelius. We have the, other Scandinavians like Grieg. We have the French are getting into it with like Ravel, Debussy.
And
the Dutch with like César Franck. And of course the Italians are still at it in the world of opera with like Verdi, who is vehemently Italian because the people have claimed him so, which is not really how we thought about those things before that. Like, this is our composer, this is our Italian. Like, yes, there was Italian music, but we're not making a big deal about at the exclusion of other music. Like this sort of delineation of the old versus the new, the heritage versus the invention of a nationalistic style.
Okay, is this like the 1800s to mid 1800s?
End of the 1800s.
End of the 1800s.
Yeah.
So we're kind of from the mid to the end.
Exactly. Brahms dies in the 1890s.
Well, this is, yeah.
So we're at the cusp of the 20th century, where and also at this point where things are becoming so beautifully and chaotically diverse. and then tonality explodes.
So I'm going to say something sort of crazy here, but wasn't this like in the same, relative period of the Industrial Revolution? When they're tinkering and Europe was big in the tinkering stuff. I mean, in the Germans in particular were very well known for their craftsmanship being probably the finest at that time.
Totally.
So it's almost like this translating into what's happening musically. It's like, I never thought of it that way before, but I mean,
100%.
I remember this from college. I had a really great Western Civ class. So anyway, just saying, we can talk.
It is a manifestation of all of that.
It's all just, it's just because that's how the mindset was changing, how the evolution was happening anyway with everything.
And everything anybody does is global.
Yes.
Right?
It's crazy.
And the mind-blowing thing for me is, well, I don't know about mind-blowing, but it's interesting.
Yeah, well, don't do that. We want to keep the mind.
Yeah. So Charles Ives,
yes,
the American experimentalist, known for deliberately composed chaos, was working while Brahms was alive. Like, think about that. This is our arch experiment. I mean, not arch, but like, this is the deacon of experimentalism at the very beginning, who's starting to define what the American voice in classical music is, which we think of as a very recent in history thing.
But it's not.
He's dovetailed with Brahms. Did they know each other? Absolutely not, or at least I don't think so. But like that historical convergence is crazy to me. That what Ives was doing, we think of as being like a very mid-1900s thing. But like, no. The Pandora's box is opening, and Brahms is still chugging, worried about Beethoven.
Well, a bunch of other people are saying, okay, we're going to catch another train. Is that right?
Anywhere.
Yeah. Going anywhere.
Right. And it's bananas. Like, Brahms steps in to reckon with the past at a time when things are escalating, accelerating, and flying in different directions. Globally, politically, geographically, musically, artistically, ideologically, philosophically. And then, like, you're absolutely right. The Industrial Revolution pulls music into the world of nationalism and cultural identity. And then what happens? We start fighting each other. We don't start. We fight each other on a more global scale than ever before. World War I.
Yes.
Right? Like at the end of World War I, holy cow, are we in a couple of different camps with respect to tonality, with respect to populism versus academic methods of composing. What's more important? Is music research, or is music something to be enjoyed? World War II, where all of a sudden that chasm in philosophicity becomes
philosophy
becomes like an object, a tool of identification with good or evil. Like, think about that. Like, populism is one step from propaganda.
Yes.
And so if you hate the Nazis,
right,
are you gonna write music that's widely digestible? Maybe not, because it represents a philosophy that represents evil.
Yes. So is this why so many of the German composers defected so quickly?
It's part
because so many of them, this is landing into my world of soundtracks.
Right.
Because so many of them came to Hollywood, or at least left.
I don't know about those film composers specifically.
Well,
but yes.
We have Max Steiner, we have Hugo Friedhofer. I believe that might have meant we have. I mean, there's more than that, but I mean, there were a lot of Korngold.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and obviously he was still composing classically. He wasn't really as well known for his film work as he really is more known, as he should be, for his classical work or his classical music. So I'm just like, my brain's just kind of putting little pieces together as you're talking. But I mean, it's crazy that I never thought about how so Brahms was like on the cusp of the past
and all of a sudden,
and the future.
100%. And he comes at this point where, The second he steps out the door of life, he's dated. Like that's the time he's in, where like one day to the next day to the next day to the next day, suddenly we're in this contemporary zeitgeist that's completely different from where Brahms was. Like he becomes, in some people's minds, like antiquated overnight by virtue of not being there anymore. Like and it's so we have these massively overlapping trends in composing, and Brahms isn't the last one for sure to be like in the past.
Schumann, you were saying? No.
Yeah, Schumann came before Brahms, and then after Brahms we get the 20th century is defined by isms.
Yeah.
One of which is neo-romanticism, neoclassicism. You've got Stravinsky jumping into that bandwagon for a period in his life. You have Sergei Rachmaninoff composing music in the in the 40s that sounds like we're in 1840, and in the style of Brahms, like
So it's just everybody's just kind of latching on to whatever part of the past or the future that they want to be in, or even both.
Yeah, and then that chaos goes on for a while, and eventually we get postmodernism, which is saying, hello, do whatever you want. It's not literally, but it's just like, whatever moment you're trying to create with your music, take it out of the Baroque box, take it out of the atonal serial box, serial with an S, not a C.
Yeah.
Serial box. And take it out of the romantic box. Take it out of the Beethoven box. Brahms, whatever. And so it's just this unbelievable stylistic and idealistic undulating going on that it's fascinating, it's exciting, and it's like...
Well, and one thing that hasn't changed, as we were talking, so Haydn was borrowing from Beethoven a little and Mozart.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, it seemed that way. Beethoven was almost borrowing from others.
Yeah.
But he was kind of throwing his own thing in more than borrowing.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
And then we have Brahms, who's sort of borrowing,
stuck in the shadow.
Of Beethoven and even Haydn and Mozart.
Yeah. And now here we are at a point when it becomes a lot more complex to try and look backwards. That's where Brahms takes us. And it's... Yeah, so like we through this kind of lineage of composers that we've been able to explore this season, it's all about where we're coming from, where we came from, and you just can't do that without getting to a point where you have to look at the way it bounces forward to the reaction against that sort of evolutionary thinking, and that's where Brahms is. We start to bounce really hard in the opposite direction, looking forward instead of backwards.
Even though he was looking backwards, that we know.
And it was something he had to stand for. He had to make that choice at the hands of others to say, no, I'm looking at Beethoven. Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, they didn't have to say, no, I'm looking at Mozart. That's just what you did. Brahms is having to stand up for it.
I see. Okay. And he did.
He did. I said we were going to put a period on Brahms. That was more of a ...
ellipsis.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, as always, it's an incredibly enlightening conversation.
It's an overwhelming conversation.
Well, yeah, it's a lot to think about, but it's still, there's still a lot to, walk away with.
Yeah.
I think, because it's reframing so much about
so
how it all happened.
Go see this concert about Mozart.
Well, exactly. That is so interesting. You were saying that you thought it was a very cleverly curated program.
It's really smart. Yeah. They're bringing Mozart into the room without having to play his...
Without ever uttering the word Mozart.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, thank you again for your time. It's always great.
It is.
And we'll hope to see you. This will be on Tuesday, November the 18th with Modigliani Quartet, 7:30 at Rice University, of course. And I don't know what else to say, but, I don't think this one is missable.
No.
In my opinion.
No.
When have you ever gone to a concert that's about Mozart without ever hearing Mozart?
Without ever hearing Mozart. now's your chance.
Now's your chance.
Because we know you've all dreamt about that.
Exactly. Well, thank you again.
You bet.